Ladies, let me tell you something right from the start. When you match a man's distance, you're not being dramatic, you're not being emotional, and you're definitely not overreacting. What you're doing is shifting the energy. And trust me, a man feels that shift immediately. Men love to act like they're unbothered, like they don't notice when you stop texting first, stop calling, stop checking in, stop being the one who holds the connection together. But let me give you the real truth. A man notices the moment your energy changes long before he admits it. You see, distance exposes everything. It exposes effort. It exposes intentions. And most importantly, it exposes truth. When a woman who was once warm, consistent, loving, and invested suddenly mirrors his behavior, it forces him into a mental space he wasn't prepared for. He starts thinking differently. He starts sensing the loss. He starts confronting his own actions. This is not about playing games. This is about reclaiming your value. It's about matching energy, not emotion. So tonight, we're breaking down exactly what goes through a man's mind when you match his distance. Step by step, layer by layer, truth by truth. Let's get into it. His ego gets hit first. And hard, when you match a man's distance, the very first thing that gets shaken isn't his heart, his emotions, or even his feelings for you. No, the first thing that feels the impact is his ego. And let me tell you something. Men can pretend all day long that they don't care, that they're unbothered, that they're cool, calm, and collected. But the male ego, that thing is fragile, sensitive, pride-driven, and easily bruised the moment a woman stops, making him feel like he's the center of her world. Men walk through relationships with a quiet confidence that you'll always be there. They assume your attention is guaranteed, your affection is their default setting, and your effort is something they're naturally entitled to. Not because they're bad people, but because they get comfortable. They get used to being prioritized without even realizing it. And that comfort creates ego. That ego creates entitlement. And entitlement creates blindness to their own behavior. So when you match his distance, it hits him like a slap he didn't see coming. Suddenly, the energy he thought he controlled is no longer in his hands. The attention he was used to receiving is gone. The woman he assumed would always reach out first no longer does. The pattern he grew dependent on has shifted. And men don't handle that shift well. A man starts thinking, hold on, what's happening here? Because his ego was enjoying being fed by your consistency, your good morning texts, your calls, your softness, your availability, your concern, your emotional investment was his comfort zone. He didn't have to try. He didn't have to pursue. He didn't have to show effort. You did the emotional heavy lifting, and he was happy to let you. But the moment you stop, the moment you mirror his actions, the moment he feels the silence instead of seeing your name pop up, his ego gets rattled, not gently, violently. Because now something is missing, and he can't pretend he doesn't notice it. Men feel absence in a very different way than women. Women feel it emotionally. Men feel it egotistically first. They interpret silence as a shift in power, not a shift in feelings. And because men tie so much of their self-worth to being desired, wanted, needed, and prioritized, your quiet becomes a threat. He starts wondering, why isn't she checking on me? The same woman who used to worry about him suddenly doesn't ask anymore. The same woman who used to care about his moods no longer tries to fix them. The same woman who used to show up emotionally has stepped back, and his ego doesn't know how to handle that kind of loss. A man's ego is built on assurance, the assurance that he is liked, valued, wanted, and admired. It's not built on vulnerability or emotional honesty. It's built on validation. So when the validation disappears, he feels exposed. And the funny part, he won't tell you this. He won't show it. He won't admit it. He won't confess that he misses your attention. He'll sit there acting like everything is cool, like he expected this, like he doesn't care. But inside, he's replaying every moment you used to reach for him, wondering why that stopped. The silence you create forces a man to feel what he's been making you feel. You're not punishing him. You're simply matching his effort. But his ego interprets it as rejection, as loss, as distance he didn't authorize. Men like to believe they're in control of the relationship dynamic. They want to pull back when they feel like it and assume you'll fill in the gap. When you don't fill it, he feels the consequences of his own inconsistency for the first time. He becomes curious, then confused, then irritated, then insecure. First, curiosity. Is she busy? Then confusion. Why is she so quiet? Then irritation. Why isn't she reaching out? And finally, insecurity. Is she losing interest? That insecurity is the moment the ego cracks. Because the idea that you could be okay without him, that you could move on emotionally, that you could shift your energy elsewhere is a direct blow to how he saw himself in your life. A man's ego thrives when he feels wanted. It shrinks when he feels replaceable. And matching his distance sends one loud, clear message. I am not chasing you. I am not validating you. I am not carrying this alone. That message is powerful. It disrupts his comfort. It interrupts his pattern. It forces him to sit with the reality that he is not the center of your world, no matter how much he believed he was. This is the moment a man starts thinking more than he's acting. This is when he begins questioning what changed. This is when he starts paying attention again. And all of that begins with the very first shock wave. His ego taking a hit he didn't expect, one he can't ignore, and one he absolutely can't hide from. He realizes your value was in your presence, not your pressure. When you match a man's distance, something powerful starts unfolding inside his mind, something he never noticed when you were the one putting in all the effort. See, men often confuse a woman's consistency with pressure. They mix up care with clinginess. They assume attention means attachment, and they completely misunderstand the difference between a woman who is invested and a woman who is desperate. But once you stop overgiving, once you stop initiating everything, once you stop chasing clarity he should have provided himself, a light turns on in his mind. And for the first time, he realizes your value was never in how much you pushed, it was in how deeply you were present. Presence is one of the most underrated gifts a woman brings into a man's life. Your presence doesn't just fill space, it stabilizes it. Your presence doesn't just add to his day, it softens it. Your presence doesn't just make him feel wanted, it makes him feel safe. But most men don't understand the weight of that presence until it's gone. And when you match his distance, he gets to experience the absence he never thought he'd feel. He starts remembering the small things you used to do, the good morning messages he shrugged off, the check-ins he took for granted, the way you noticed when his energy felt off, even when he thought he hit it well. Your presence made him feel cared for even when he pretended he didn't need it. Your attention made him feel important even when he acted unbothered. Your consistency made him feel chosen even when he wasn't choosing you properly in return. But when you pull back, he finally understands that what he thought was pressure was actually support. What he interpreted as neediness was actually love. What he saw as your emotional intensity was actually your emotional generosity. Your presence was the glue holding the connection together. He didn't see it because he never had to imagine life without it. Men don't appreciate emotional investments they don't have to work for. They misunderstand the ease you brought into their lives as something guaranteed rather than something given. And given by choice, not obligation. So when you match his distance, he begins to feel the difference between your energy and your absence. He realizes his days feel a little quieter without your voice checking in. His phone feels a little lighter without your messages popping up. The comfort he had in knowing you were emotionally present starts fading. He starts noticing that the peace you brought was not something he created. It was something you contributed, something he benefited from without ever acknowledging. This is where the recognition begins. Not in his heart, but in his routine. A man feels the absence of a woman not in grand emotional ways at first, but in the small, subtle gaps she used to fill. The encouragement she brought, the softness she offered, the effort she made effortless. And as those things fade, he starts to feel imbalance. He realizes life feels a little heavier. He notices he's thinking more than he's smiling. And he begins to understand that the presence he lost was not pressure. It was partnership. Men often don't see the value of a woman's presence because they confuse emotional effort with expectation. They think because a woman cares, she wants something from them. But when you stop giving, when you stop trying, when you stop carrying emotional weight he was supposed to share, he realizes the truth. You were never asking for too much. He was giving too little. He finally starts understanding that your presence wasn't about demanding his time. It was about offering your heart. It wasn't about needing him. It was about choosing him. It wasn't about pushing him. It was about supporting him. And when all of that goes quiet, he notices something that shakes him. You weren't asking him to be perfect. You were just showing up consistently. And he still didn't meet you halfway. That's when the regret kicks in, because a man knows that a woman who shows up without being asked, who gives without keeping score, who cares without conditions is rare. She is not found easily. She is not replaced effortlessly. She is not forgotten quickly. When he feels life without your presence, he doesn't feel relief. He feels loss, a loss he didn't expect, a loss he caused, a loss he now has to sit with. Matching his distance becomes the clearest mirror you could ever hold up to him. It shows him that the peace, comfort, and emotional warmth he enjoyed came directly from you. Not from the relationship, not from him, not from circumstance, from you. And when a man realizes the difference between presence and pressure, he understands this one truth. You weren't overwhelming. You were irreplaceable. He starts questioning his own role. When you match a man's distance, something shifts inside him that he didn't expect. At first, he assumes you're just on your feelings, being dramatic or trying to make a point. But when the silence continues, when the energy stays matched and the effort doesn't return, he begins to do something men rarely do. When they feel comfortable, he starts examining himself. And trust me, that self-reflection doesn't come easy. Men avoid accountability the way they avoid directions. They only look at it when they're officially lost. Your distance creates that lost feeling. Your silence becomes a mirror he never asked to look into. And the reflection he sees, that's where the discomfort starts. At first, he tries to convince himself that you're overreacting, that what you're doing is temporary, that you'll come around. But as the days pass and your energy doesn't shift back, he slowly realizes he's not dealing with a phase. He's dealing with the consequences of his own behavior. And that's when the questions begin to echo in his mind. What did I do wrong? Did I push her away? Did I make her feel unwanted? Was I too cold? Did I make her feel like she was the only one trying? Did I give her something to pull back from? These questions hit a man quietly because deep down, he knows you didn't distance yourself for no reason. Women don't emotionally check out because they're bored. They check out because they're tired. They're drained. They're done trying to make something work alone. And he starts to realize that maybe, just maybe, he created the very distance he's now feeling. A man begins replaying conversations, moments, and interactions he previously dismissed. He remembers the times you tried to talk about the relationship and he brushed it off. He remembers the times you waited for him to initiate plans, but he didn't. He remembers the moments you needed reassurance and he went silent. He remembers ignoring the subtle signs of your emotional exhaustion, the sighs, the pauses, the silence behind your voice. When you match his distance, those moments replay in his mind with painful clarity. He sees where he dropped the ball. He sees where he took advantage of your patience. He sees where he underestimated your strength. Because the truth is, most men don't realize how damaging their inconsistency is until the woman stops trying to compensate for it. When you no longer smooth over his rough edges, when you no longer cushion his lack of effort, when you no longer carry the emotional weight he should have been sharing, he begins to feel the impact of his own behavior. And here's the part that really shakes him. He starts realizing that you weren't asking for too much. You were asking for the bare minimum: effort, consistency, communication. And even then, he couldn't rise to the occasion. This realization is uncomfortable. It makes him aware of his flaws. It exposes patterns he didn't want to acknowledge, because now he can't hide behind excuses like, "I'm just busy," "I didn't know," or "I'm not good at expressing myself." Your silence removed the excuses. Your distance removed the distractions. All that's left is the truth he avoided when you were still trying. He played a role in losing the closeness he once enjoyed. A man starts questioning his own role because he realizes that you didn't distance yourself suddenly. You distanced yourself gradually, and he begins to see all the subtle signs you showed before this moment. The emotional frustration behind your smiles, the moments you tried to communicate your needs, the times you pulled back just a little to see if he'd notice, the way your tone slowly shifted from hopeful to tired. He realizes you didn't walk away emotionally overnight. You drifted away because he kept giving you reasons to. He made the connection feel one-sided. He made the communication feel forced. He made the relationship feel uncertain. And now he's sitting with the reality that your distance is not punishment. It's a reflection of the imbalance he created. This is when the guilt creeps in. Not the guilt of losing you, but the guilt of knowing he didn't show up when you were still there. Knowing he took advantage of your softness. Knowing he didn't fight for the connection when you were willing to. Knowing he let his pride, distractions, or emotional immaturity push away a woman who was trying. He starts thinking, what if I had tried harder? What if I had communicated better? What if I didn't pull back first? What if I hadn't taken her for granted? These questions follow him everywhere. To work, in the shower, before bed, in the quiet moments he can't escape, because nothing haunts a man more than the moment he realizes he was part of the problem, not just the victim of your distance. And the hardest truth he faces is this: you didn't match his distance to hurt him. You matched it because he gave you no safe place to stay emotionally. And now that he's left alone with his thoughts, he has to confront every choice he made that pushed you to that point. He begins to understand that your silence is honest, your distance is deserved, your withdrawal is logical. And questioning his own role is the first time he actually sees himself from your perspective, a perspective he avoided until the quiet made it impossible to ignore. He begins to fear your independence. When you match a man's distance, something unexpected starts to rise inside him. Fear. Not fear of losing control. Not fear of confrontation. Not even fear of you being upset. What he starts fearing deep down is your independence. That quiet, powerful shift where he realizes you don't need him. You may have wanted him, cared for him, invested in him, but you were never dependent on him. And that truth shakes him far more than your silence ever could. See, when a woman pulls back, a man expects her to crumble a little. He expects her to check his social media, wait for his text, replay his words, or sit in confusion. He expects emotional panic because he assumes he had that much influence over her. But when he notices you aren't chasing clarity, you aren't begging for answers, you aren't explaining yourself, and you aren't reacting, something hits him. You're functioning just fine without him, maybe even better. And men are not prepared for that. They're prepared for emotional responses, not emotional strength. They're prepared for pleading, not peace. They're prepared for confusion, not confidence. When your energy levels out with his, when you stop trying to fix what he broke, when you shift your focus back to yourself, he sees a version of you he underestimated. He begins to fear the independence that was always within you, but wasn't visible while you were invested in him. A man who thought he had emotional influence over you now sees he was wrong. He sees that you're capable of redirecting your heart, your attention, and your energy without falling apart, that you can thrive outside the dynamic he created, that you are not waiting for him to return, explain, or validate. Your independence exposes a truth he never considered you were choosing him, not depending on him. And a man is never more shaken than when he realizes he was an option while he believed he was the center. At first, this realization confuses him. He wonders, is she really okay? Is she pretending?